Dave, it's Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And on this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Long Island metal crew, Moontooth. The band's new album will be released on May 13th via Pure Noise Records.
Look at this photograph.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's because we've known each other too long.
Could you put money on that? Phototroph is album number 3 from Moontooth, which follows up their 2019 album Crux. The album was produced and mixed by Josh Wilbur, who has worked with pretty much everybody in metal. Everybody.
Yep. And your neighbour. If you're looking at your neighbour tomorrow while he's cutting his grass, he produced his album.
Produced by Josh Wilbur. Moontooth. I thoroughly adored this band's debut, Chroma Paragon. This was a band that, like, on a debut album showed crazy potential. Like, you could tell, like, there was big things going to come from this band. Really kind of turned heads with that first album, and I think, like, that's primarily because they are quite a distinctive sounding band. Like, when I was sitting listening to this album, I was like, it's really difficult to say who Moontooth actually sound like outright. Like, there's little elements of things you go, oh, right, okay, that's a wee bit like that, but there's not one band in my mind that I'm like, yeah, that sounds like.
They're an easy band to recommend, though.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Without they're an eisy band to recommend as long as the follow-up question is, who do they sound like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. Stylistically it's very, very varied, ranging from progressive metal to rock to alternative to blues to hardcore, post-hardcore. Different, very difficult to pigeonhole. But when I was listening to this, I was thinking they don't sound like this band, but I would liken them to them in terms of their career and their progression. It reminds me of Every Time I Die.
Right. Yeah.
And the reason that I kind of got to there was not because they sound like that, but Every Time I Die, when they landed on the scene, like when you go back to like Hot Damn and stuff, they were really raw, really unhinged, quite rough around the edges.
Explosive. You know what I mean? You really volatile. You didn't really know what you were going to get in the next song.
Yeah. But you could tell as well on that early release from Every Time I Die that they had a ton of potential as well. And with each album that they bring out, like Every Time I Die, it sounds more focused, it sounds more refined, their songwriting is so much better. And this has happened basically with the 3 releases that Moontooth have put out. I think album 3 is the best Moontooth have ever sounded.
I would agree with that. I would also say that I don't think they're at their peak yet either, which is the scary thing when listening to it. It is a very accomplished album.
Yeah. But
like when you finish it, you get that vibe that there's a gear that maybe they've not explored yet, or something that they could. Like, I would genuinely not ever be surprised about them saying, you know, we want to go down a darker side, or we want to go down something but more commercially viable. Anything these guys do, I think they could. They're very adaptable. I think that whatever they decided to do, they would fucking nail. Yeah. And this to me feels like the culmination of those previous 2 albums. It kind of feels like you can very much. Every Time I Die is probably the best example of this, where there is a clear through line between those albums, right? The previous album made sense of the first album. This is a band that's growing and maturing, and then you land on this one, and this is the next logical step on their journey, which you don't always get with bands. Bands sometimes get, especially by the second or third release, sometimes the second release is deliberately trying to not sound like the first release so they don't get pigeonholed. And a lot of bands will cater to a specific sound to get signed, and then on that second album the real band comes out, so to speak. That is, you know, like, sometimes bands get a bit, not embarrassed, but kind of feel like they need to brush off some of that first album stank. Moontooth have never felt like that. Even on this album, you can clearly chart the through line as a logical, linear line through the albums of, all right, this is what happens when you have more money, more time to work on something, touring experience, just all those factors that make a band. It's like going to the gym, you know what I mean? You go to the gym, you train, as a result, you start to look a bit fitter, like all those things that kind of come in line with that. You can follow that through, and you see those timeline photos of people that were, I was a skinny guy, and then I went to the gym, and 6 months later, I'm fucking ripped. And you can see, like, that Moontooth are kind of like that as well, in that you can visibly, it's not like you could put that first album on, Dave, and then this album and be like that, well, they're not the same band.
Yeah.
Clearly the same band, it's just this, like, sounds much more accomplished and confident than they did back then, and even back then they sounded accomplished and confident. So it's, it's just time and potential equals greatness.
Yeah. I think what I like here is that even though it definitely you can hear that through line, Crux was thematically maybe a little darker. Like the themes are a little more kind of negative, but on Photograph they've veered down a kind of brighter type path. Which, when I was reading a bit about the album itself, it's kind of playing into the album title, which is to do with phototropism and like growing towards the light type thing. And the album still has its kind of dark moments, but they balance it out very well. Even like a track like Death Wish Blues, which comes out of the gate very, very kind of hardcore laced. They start to slowly push the track back towards a more kind of uplifting tone after that first verse. And it almost has these like kind of like soulful rock vibes in the melody, which really like just give it this feel good hook to it.
The way we were speaking about this off air with Kyle, who didn't listen to the album. That's right, shots fired. Didn't listen to the album this week, which is why he's not with us, which is why me and Dave haven't wore clothes the following night. This is the same night's recording. Kyle just didn't do the homework. And I likened his vocals to them in terms of presence on a release, as opposed to like Sim specifically to Lejeune from Seven Dust. I'd actually go on like another one that kind of reminded me of the cunt from Forever and Ever.
Oh yeah.
Who had like, there's a specific sound of that voice which could actually easily plug in to many different bands in many different genres. But weirdly, when it's sat where it is on that band, it kind of always kind of feels like it should have been there, but two, it opens the sound up a bit more. And Moontooth it's almost like a secret weapon, even though it's not so secret, because they've been utilising it for a while. The chops to be able to go into kind of that bluesy soulful rock element, like, allows the songs to emote a lot more. You get a lot of feeling and a lot of passion from the tracks, whilst maybe the guitars aren't necessarily leaning that way, and the songs don't have you're maybe not even heading on a grandiose level towards that. It anchors it back and gives it a focal point to make tracks sound fucking huge when they're not really doing anything except that dude singing over the top of what they're playing. They're not elevating extra instrumentation in the background. That in itself is enough to hook you in and feel something from the track. Like, it's a very emotive style of singing, and it really it plays through consecutive songs, like all the way through. That's the hook through there, and it's not just the vocal hook, but it's the hook all the way through the album. That lightness that you're talking about, a lot of that time it's not just delivered by the instrumentation, but it's delivered by the vocals as well, even if they aren't singing the most memorable vocal hook you've heard. When it comes in and the way it's used, and it kind of makes you feel, dare I say, happy, Dave?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely feel good. I think I could hear lots of little adjustments in the songwriting on this album, which is what kind of makes it stand out. And it's not like they weren't doing those things on Crux, but I think it sounds even more polished on this album. Their instincts on when to transition into a hook, big hook leading chorus, or to drop it down a gear and hit you with something heavier, is just so on the money. I didn't feel like there were many moments on the album where they really dropped the ball at all, or they just like phoned it in or ran out of ideas. Even there's a moment on the album where they changed the guitar tone to give you like a little bit of something different. Track called the Conduit. The guitar tone in that is wicked. It's like really like crunchy or like fizzy sounding or something like. But it's just, you know, that little enhancement to push it into that next level sonically was really cool. A lot of really kind of standout tracks, a lot of highlights. The only one that didn't really kind of grab me on here was Grip on the Ridge, which is
the track before it, track 8, is like one of my favourites on the album, and it's so fucking strong. And I think track 9 not followed that, I don't think it would. It feels like a bit of a drop off. Do you know what I mean? Because like track 7, track 8 are so fucking powerful, and then you drop into a Grip on the Ridge, and it's like, right. But I think it carries it like Carry Me Home. The following track brings it back super strong. It's just that one feels like it's not even a misstep. It's just I don't think it's on the same.
I can see why they added it. It's a more kind of ballad type track, so it's got a bit of an ebb and flow in the album. But it's the one track that I kind of wanted to skip when I was listening to the album. Yeah. But as you said, it's followed up by Carry Me Home, which is really bluesy and funky, and then I think the album closer, Phototroph, the title track, is. It's great. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic closing track. Like the riffs on that last track are almost got like an AOR feel to them, like but more progressive. Like it's really weird, very kind of rock kind of driven, but and John Carbone just sounds vocally unbelievable. Like his delivery, his choice of melody is faultless. That track was just kind of seared in my brain afterwards. Like it just really sinks the hooks in. I think he's on his way to being like one of the best vocalists in the genre. Like he's just
I totally phenomenal. Agree. It's not just the ability to sing, right? Because there's plenty of vocalists out there that can sing. We've listened to loads recently where we're not that. This vocalist has a really distinctive voice, a really distinctive tone. But it's the actual choice of melody. Yeah. Like to be able to be as versatile as he is from a melody perspective, and every track on this has a hook. Yeah. Like so he manages to write them, and they're not just following what the guitar's playing. You know, he's very conscious of that. Yeah. And it is obviously a skill that he has. Like he obviously has a skill to very quickly come up with memorable melody, and that's a talent. And I think it's as one, like I say, it's an asset to the band overall, but in a lot of respects is what I think will just keep propelling them. To go back to what you were saying about the Every Time I Die situation, Keith Buckley, the further they went on as a band, he was the one that maybe progressed the most. Yep, I'd agree. Yeah. And I would say Moontooth have the same thing. Like vocally, he's like always been a great vocalist, but here I think there's that part where I just feel like there's nothing this guy can't do. No, I know. And that's exciting. That's an exciting prospect because it opens them up as a band to experiment more or try more or go in different directions when you have the confidence that your vocalist can do that. Because musicians like guitarists, drummers, whatever, they're maybe a little bit more versatile instruments than a vocal is. A vocal has a cadence, has a tone, has a register, and as a result, the person delivering that almost has a box around them of what he can and can't do. All the other instruments, you can have pedals, chord progressions, drumming styles, slow down, speed up. Those things allow you to explore vastly different territories, and if the vocals don't fit in that, it almost confines the sound of the band. Moontooth don't have that, and that's the thing that gets me giddy. That's the thing that gets me excited because you don't know where album number 4 is going to go, but I'll tell you right now, I imagine wherever it goes, vocals are going to be just as great, and the band are going to be along with them. It's something it's easy to take for granted, but like because they make it sound so effortless, so it's easy to take for granted. Yeah. But the craftsmanship behind the songwriting in this one is stellar. Yeah. Because, like you said, out with a ballad, which if they're going to do it, they've got the vocalist to do it. I'm with you. There's enough dexterity on this album. They don't actually need a slower ballad track. You're getting those elements interspersed amongst. And at no point was I feeling like, this is getting so heavy now, I kind of wish there was some melody. That's not there. It's in all the tracks. So it kind of feels like, I know why they've done it.
Yeah.
I question the placement as well. You know, 3 from the End feels like earlier in the album maybe works a bit better, but it's them doing something they want to do, and as artists who crafted an album like this, we have to give them that. Doesn't mean it's the best thing on there. Certainly not a bad song. It's well composed, hits the mark. To me, it just feels like you're getting like a couple of like clear-cut bangers beforehand, bit of a lull, and then clear-cut bangers to the end. So it's kind of like, why is that lull in there from a compositional point of view? From a live point of view, that track probably makes sense. You can do that as a bit to breathe things out. Maybe that's how they're looking at it, as less of a listening experience and more of a live experience. To link into a lot of what you were saying, I think Moontooth are a really, really interesting example of a band that should be a lot bigger than they are.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they should be fucking huge. They should this sort of band should be like platinum albums and all the rest, because they have those elements in there. They have very catchy, very memorable songs. They have an edge and something different about them, which I think makes them, interesting to outliers, but also to the people that just like commercial sounding heavy music. Super radio friendly. Like, even when they're going a bit obscure and doing a wee bit of the prog stuff, it's still radio friendly at its core. And at no point do they create boring songs. Like, the songs are all still viably single or radio length. So, to me, it's like a no-brainer. I sit and I listen to them and I'm like that. Like, Moontooth should be huge. Like, people should be... This is the band people should be talking about. And I always get the feeling that, one, it's maybe the name that puts people off. Two, the label they're on isn't the biggest label in the world. But three, I think there's a degree of... The industry likes what the industry knows, and there's a certain outlier that they don't want to take a risk on, which is a shame, because with the right marketing behind these guys could be fucking massive.
Yep.
And this album is a testament to the band kind of not just finding their foot, because that footing's always been relatively strong, but this is, to me, them... If you imagine like venue size, this is them moving up to the next venue size, and what they've got. There's something that feels bigger about this release. There's something that kind of takes them from being like the main support act to a big band to being like, oh no, we can headline now. We can have some, and that to me is exciting, because like we said before, it's that progression of the sound. Thus far, I think there's so much potential beyond this, but just talking about this release, and you've already mentioned the dexterity of it, by the time you get to like something like Deathwish Blues, you get those like big rocky bluesy elements, and vocally he can handle it with ease. The new single Alpha Howl is fucking great, and the accompanying video, if you get a chance to check it out, is also awesome. But to me, it's like tracks 6, 7, and 8 are like this mismatch of kind of just awesome elements. You've got Oh My Owl, The Conduit, and track 8, as I call it, which are 3 back-to-back fucking impressive songs that don't sound alike at all, but are fucking great. And once again, it's the dexterity, it's the confidence, it's the ability to put all those things in cohesively and make them sound great in an album. And then lastly, and I don't know if we've leaned too much into it, and we probably should, production is spot on for this. It's like pitch perfect. I loved it.
I think what is really cool about the production is, even though they've moved to obviously have a guy like Josh Wilbur produce their album, it's still very in keeping with their past releases. It doesn't sound like
you get those like releases from certain bands where they go, well, a producer, and you're like that. The one I always come back to, and it's not the greatest example of, Slipknot have 2 albums produced by Ross Robinson. So you have that idea what their sound is. Their next one's by Rick Rubin, and the band sounds completely different. Like almost as if, right, are these the same guys, or is this Slipknot tribute? And that's nothing. I love the production on Volume 3. I think it's really great, but it does sound hugely different.
It does.
And like, it's easy to do that. You get a different guy who wants to do different things. This doesn't sound like off the mark.
It sounds slightly more polished, but the consistency is there, you know, from
Which
the
makes me
three
think
albums.
that's what gives me excitement about potentially seeing Moonto somewhere down the line.
Yep.
That's clearly what the band sound like. There's no fuckery there, you know what I mean? There's no let's add these things, tweak these things to make it sound different. That's clearly what the band sound like.
Yeah, for sure. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think it's fantastic. I was always a fan, to be honest. And personally, I think this is their most consistent album to date. I likened them obviously to Every Time I Die as in terms of the journey. But this is only album 3. So like the sky is the limit basically for these guys.
It's insane, man, honestly. You should not sound as confident and as good as this on your third album.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Ratings for Photograph. As I said, I do think this is a shade better than Crux for me. I felt like there was more an instantaneous connection with this album, whereas the previous album took me a few listens to kind of fully get into it. I think it's not perfect. There's a couple of wee things, obviously, one track that I didn't really like, but I think I would probably go 4.5 on this. I think it's very close, but as you said, I think there's probably another gear. I think there's room for them to do even more.
I think they've got a 5-star album in them, and we've yet to hear it.
Yeah.
And that, like, if ever that's a reason to be excited about a band's like future endeavours, then I don't know what is. So
I'm going to go come in at a 4.5 out of 5. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
Look at this 4.5. Yeah, it's so close, man. It is so tantalizingly close to that 5, and the band have it in them.
Yeah,
that's the exciting thing. Like, these are like, if you're like, this is like, we talk about bands to watch. This band should have already been on your radar. If this is the album that gets them on your radar, that makes me excited. But they should be. Expect great things.
Yep, for sure. Moontooth, about to drop their new album Photograph on Pure Noise Records on the 13th of May. Links below to the Facebook to the pre-order. Check it out. Let us know what you think. They've put out a few singles already. I'm happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on them, and when the album drops, happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on that as well. That's the review. Thanks for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.